Hello friends, wonderful greetings of the day to all of you. So here I, Kunal Nagpal, would like to welcome you all once again to an amazing academic session. Dear friends, today's session is basically dedicated to discuss the core factors having a significant impact on the overall relationship between India and China, the two main emerging economies of the globe. And also, as all of us are quite aware, that the entire global economic situation is getting more and more sensitive with each passing day. Hence, our overall thinking process while designing and implementing the long-term strategies need to be more and more proactive, along with having a far-sighted and long-term visionary approach. We also need to incorporate a very important element of flexibility and innovation in this particular aspect. We have also been witnessing from last 2.5 to 3 years a lot of developments have taken place across the globe which have basically shaken major economies worldwide. For instance, the major pandemic, COVID, has not only created upheaval in the health sector, but also it has been creating a lot of disturbances in the overall functioning of the economies, be it for the developed countries or be it for the developing countries. Hence, these countries have to keep on modifying their overall economic policies and financial policies again and again in order to attain the equilibrium in all the economic factors and all the relevant economic factors. Moreover, the recent crisis which has struck the world economy, that is the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war, which commenced on 24th February 2022, has not only been creating a loss of human lives, immense loss to the livelihoods, but also it has basically created. It has basically been creating the major damage to the overall functioning and stability of the global economy as a whole. So, my dear friends, keeping all these things in mind and also taking a very important point into consideration that the times about to come are actually projected to be more sensitive. Our overall strategic framework has to be very, very mature and proactive, and also we cannot afford to have the disturbed relationships with our peer countries. Hence, today's topic of discussion, that is the detailed analysis of the relationship between India and China and how to improve the overall strategic ties between these two emerging economies is of vital importance. So, going ahead, we will like to put forward the points laid down by the leading pioneer, Mr. T.K. Arun, who basically states that the world, including China, needs India to rise. And here I would like to emphasize on the major role of our economy, India, in maintaining the overall global balance. Yes, you have heard me right, global balance, because Every economy, be it for the developed country or the developing country, is actually appreciating the overall strategic framework being adopted by the leaders of our country. Because even because despite of being the developing country, our country's overall stability in the core economic factors is actually worth an applause. And the intensity of the fluctuations caused in the economic parameters in this global upheaval, uh, f- uh, 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 the intensity of fluctuations caused in the Indian economy is actually quite less if we do the comparative analysis with the figures of the other major countries across the globe. And this particular point has been put forward by the leading international organizations like the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Hence, today the world, including China, basically need India to rise. Now let's have a detailed insights why this particular statement has been said. The two recent developments abroad have a significant bearing on India's prospects. No, Rishi Sunak's emergence as the next British Prime Minister is not one of them. In the second week of October, the United States government released its National Security Strategy 2022, that is NSS 22, and last week the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of India, that is CPC, gave Xi Jinping unchecked power to lead China to the glory, as he defines it. So the NSS 22 document identifies China as the United States' systemic rival and Russia as a power to be constrained, but lacking China's ability to compete with the United States across the board on every count of the national power. So the CPC Congress underlines China's readiness to recast the world to end the former colonial powers' dominance of the world order and their keenness to breach national sovereignty and hence meddle in the internal affairs of the countries such as China in the name of the duty to protect the human rights. Now we are going to discuss if history is any guide in our present discussion. China sees India as a country from which it has to wrest the territory. So the prominence given at the 20th Party Congress to the Galvin clash between the Chinese and Indian forces in 2020 shows China's attitude towards India. Xi Jinping is actually determined to restore the Middle Kingdom's erstwhile glory, of which reclaiming deemed Chinese territory lost to imperial pressure and internal weakness is an integral part. And recently, Washington designated India a major defense partner, permitting the sale of sophisticated arms to India. The NSS 22 sees a role for India as the member of the Indo-Pacific Quad, which includes Australia and Japan, apart from the United States and India, as part of the West Asian grouping I2U2, that is India, Israel, the United Arab Emirates and the United States, and as a member of emerging economies such as Argentina, Indonesia, Senegal and South Africa, with interests aligned with the United States, whose leaders can be admitted to the antechamber of the watering hole, where the great and the good of the G7, the Western Alliance core steering group, gather. So what NSS 22 does not do is to recognize a powerful India as the necessary and sufficient condition for keeping China's rise peaceful. That China will continue to grow qualitatively. It is already one of the world's greatest publishers of original scientific research, and also quantitatively overtaking the United States as the largest economy is actually not in doubt. Denying China access to the advanced US technology, as the Biden administration has done, will only delay that process, not thwart it. And the global order would have to reconfigure to allow a greater say for China in the assorted nodes of global governance and coordination that enable globalized growth. So the basic question really is to how to prevent this process turning violent and chaotic. The answer should be obvious, but unfortunately isn't. By India's emergence as a global power that can countervail China in the strategic capability, economic heft, and technological prowess. Does India have what it takes to become such a bulwark against an unruly China? The largest 16 to 64 age group of workers, that is the basic demographic dividend, the largest cohort of young people who can be trained in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the social sciences and humanities, historical goodwill across large swathes of the world, entrepreneurial dynamism that makes India home to the third largest herd of native-bred unicorns, a long ingrained culture that allows multiple faiths, languages, and ethnicities to not just tolerate one another and coexist, but also to positively cohere and thrive. A market economy capable of decentralized decision making, vital for creative destruction. These are the basic strengths that qualify India to emerge as a countervailing power. This is the main highlight of our discussion, which have basically emphasized on the core strengths that India qualifies in order to emerge as a countervailing power. Now, we will basically discuss how to stand up for our place. Few in India take this global role seriously, and the peddlers of hatred who sow the seeds of social schism certainly do not. And the political patronage of basically sectarian approach encourages the opportunists in the media, police, civil service, and judiciary to amplify the harm. The education system works only in patches, and even there, it actually valorizes the pre-existing knowledge and authority, curbing innovation. And the basic segments of the Indian business damage India's reputation by exporting shoddy goods, even toxic cough syrup that kills the babies. External observers develop doubts about India's potential. Apart from the collective awareness of and commitment to realizing India's geopolitical potential, India needs shared clarity on external dynamics. And a world in which Russia is a constrained minor power would be dominated by the United States and China. China has hostile designs on Indian territory and sound reason to stunt India's strategic growth. So in the absence of powerful Russia, India has to turn to the United States and its allies to resist China, giving the US leverage that would actually smother India's long cherished strategic autonomy. Hence, it is in India's interest for Russia to continue as a center of global power and for Europe to emerge as a power center in its own right. Why would China help Russia retain critical geopolitical salience? In order to avoid becoming the sole focus of tender American administrations, India has animus towards none. Its rise is basically good for itself and for the world, including China. So a powerful India strips the menace from China's further rise. So basically, dear friends, in this particular article, we have tried to discuss why it is extremely vital for India to keep on rising and actually prospering despite of the situations prevailing in the global scenario. Now, the Chinese envoy has discussed, has basically put forth his viewpoints. That is, India-China ties have a great bearing on the world. So the basic intention to keep on strengthening the ties between India and China and to increase the cordial relationship between these two economies is actually of vital importance for maintaining the overall economic balance across the globe. Here we go. China-India relations have significance not only for the two countries but also have a great bearing on the region and the world at large. The Chinese ambassador Sun Weidong has said, the envoy also has made 4 proposals to improve the bilateral ties, and the proposals outlined were promotion of mutual understanding and trust. Second is win-win cooperation. Third is proper handling of differences. And fourth point is strengthening the coordination and collaboration between these two economies. I repeat, strengthening the overall promotion of the mutual understanding and trust between the two countries, win-win cooperation between these two countries, proper handling of differences between them, and finally strengthening the coordination and collaboration between these two emerging economies. He further says, next year India will assume the presidency of SCO and G20, and China will support India in its related works together with other member states. The ambassador was basically speaking at a virtual event recently while addressing the public on the 73rd anniversary of the founding of People's Republic of China. And the Asian century can only be fulfilled through joint development and mutually beneficial cooperation of China and India, as well as through strengthening the solidarity and cooperation among China, India, and other Asian countries, he added. So following the Eastern Ladakh standoff, India has been consistently maintaining that peace along the line of actual control, and it was the key for overall development of the ties, and that the state of the border will determine the state of the relationship between India and China. Last month, the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that the relationship between India and China was basically going through an extremely difficult phase after what Beijing had done at the border, and had also emphasized that the Asian century would not happen if the two countries could not join hands. So next year, India will assume the presidency of SCO and G20, and China will support India in its related works together with other member states, the ambassador added. Now we are basically going to discuss how the normalization of India-China ties is actually in the world's interest. This basic insight is being given by our External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, and he basically put forward these points after China envoy's farewell call. The External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar met the ongoing Chinese envoy to India, Sun Weidong, on Wednesday and emphasized that peace and tranquility in the border areas are the basic essential points in order to maintain the bilateral ties. Received Ambassador Sun Weidong of China for a farewell call, emphasized that the development of India-China relations is basically guided by the three mutuals. Peace and tranquility in the border areas is very essential, Jaishankar tweeted after meeting the Ambassador Sun. Therefore, the overall normalization of India-China relations is in the basic interests of both countries, of Asia and the world at large, he said in another tweet. Sun also assumed office in July 2019 is now leaving at a time when the two sides are actually trying to manage the ties following the 2020 border clash that has remained the dominant issue between the neighbors. In his farewell remarks on Tuesday, the Chinese envoy stressed the need to resolve the differences between India and China and hence uphold the principle of non-interference in each other's internal affairs. Sun said, "It is only natural for important neighbors, China and India, to have some differences, but the key is basically how to handle the differences. We should be aware that the common interests of the two countries are actually greater than the differences," the Chinese envoy said in the remarks posted on the Chinese embassy website. The two sides, India and China, should basically strive to manage and resolve the differences and look for a proper solution through dialogue and consultation instead of defining China-India relations by differences. The two countries need to respect each other's political systems and the development paths and therefore uphold the principle of non-interference in each other's internal affairs, he said. The Chinese envoy said that both India and China should break out of the geopolitical trap and find a new path that is different from the past. There is enough room in the world for China and India to develop together, and two countries and peoples should have enough wisdom to find a way to live in peace and achieve the win-win cooperation between the two big neighboring and emerging countries, Sun said. Since April 2020, India and China have had several rounds of diplomatic and military level meetings on the situation along the line of actual control in the India-China border areas. India has repeatedly emphasized and said that India-China relations cannot be normal unless the border situation is, and added that if China disturbs the peace and tranquility in the border areas, it will impact the relationships further in a holistic manner. So dear friends, this was the basic insight being given by our respected External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar. So I hope today's discussion would be really useful in order to have the clear understanding of the very important and significant matter pertaining to the global economy, that is the overall strategic relationship between India and China. So I hope you all consider this session to be interesting and of great use to the and of great utility to your overall knowledge set. Thank you so much. Namaste.